is especially relevant if the contention is that gender is socially constructed. So if this contention about gender being socially constructed is to be meaningful, naturally we must understand such a construction as emerging out of the particularity of a people's history. It ought to stand to reason, therefore, that in each and every instance, constructions of gender react to and reflect the social, political, and economic realities of the cultures from which they are drawn. However, constructions of gender could as well be made from a mold. There's a presumption of universality and essentialism concerning what it means to be a woman and what feminism is, as well as what it ought to be. This presumption causes the trivialization of a natural multidimensionality of social, economic, and political realities of vast areas of the non-Western world. Now, taken to its logical consequence, hybridity entails having a woman who is composed of a mishmash of influences, a woman that is neither hither nor thither, a woman who differs not, whether found in a village in the Catskills region of upstate New York, in New York City, or Tokyo, or Hong Kong, or Rio de Janeiro, or Lagos, Nigeria. The more the Western values, behaviors, and idiosyncrasies that such a woman has, the more progressive she is assumed to be. The hybrid woman owes her existence to the reality that there's a Western hegemony in scholarship, in funding, and in the production and dissemination of ideas and knowledge. Hybridity and cosmopolitanism have consequently become the new and dominant ideologies. Some feminist scholars and activists may ask, as one white American colleague asked me, why talk about difference? We are all the same. Talking about difference only divides and weakens us. This kind of thinking appears to be progressive because it asserts and affirms our common humanity. However, it should also generate concern because the studies of Africa and its women continue largely to produce enigmatic and exotic depictions from the Western imagination. This is not a one-way relationship. African scholars are themselves a product of Western educational systems, even when they're in their home countries, because of imperialism and past colonization. They too participate in the mystification of Africa that produces a hybrid and cosmopolitan African as the ideal in an idealization of Western cultural philosophies and downgrading of African values and culture as irrelevant or subordinate. There are other implications of cosmopolitanism and hybridity. Africa was colonized by various European countries, including Britain, France, Portugal, Belgium, and this was from the late 19th to the mid 20th century predominantly. This too was a part of the globalization process. Colonization was a means to the end of extending the reach of wealthy countries, profit-seeking capitalist enterprises. And these countries and their enterprises took proprietary control of areas of the world to which they went in the global south. They extracted wealth from these countries for the benefit of the metropolitan colonizer. Today, there's a new kind of colonization underway, and that colonization of today does not require physical control, but it recognizes the power of profit. And we see instances where capital goes through the world unimpeded in a never-ending search for profit. It exercises this right because international law legitimates it. We also have evidence of such exercise of power manifesting most apparently when countries are coerced or persuaded or advised by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to integrate their economies into the world's economic mainstream. The right of labor, including African women's labor, to similarly range for profit-making opportunities is only reserved for a privileged few who have whatever marketable skills are adjudged to be relevant to the global economy at any given moment in time. Since some countries are more powerful economically, they are able to reach in a proprietary manner into the rest of the world to pull out resources of any kind, be it commodities or human beings or intellectual property. These countries are also more stable politically, economically, and socially. And so they have another kind of pull. Like magnets, they draw people who flee from political and economic and social uncertainty and people who are fleeing from conflict. Africa and the rest of the global south then come to resemble labor reserves from which both brain and brawn are drawn to service the hungry global economy. Women who are recruited, either at home or abroad, into this global economy are not incorporated on an equal footing with the women of the new metropole to which they are taken. They are unequal, they are less privileged, they are more vulnerable. Those who succeed more than others because they have skills or have made it may also bear tremendous responsibilities on the home front. Their extended family expects them to assist with future immigration, remittances, and accommodation when they visit. The same questions that informed my previous inquiry into the relationship between hybridity, feminism, gender, and power continue to be relevant. When women meet in the global terrain, they do not meet as equals. They are bound together by sameness and difference. Uncovering the nature of sameness and difference entails doing good research. Socially conscious research may also involve some advocacy on behalf of oppressed minorities. This involves more than good intentions. It also involves more than the deployment of the most current theories. Feminist scholars ought to constantly ask themselves whether the issues they pursue so vigorously are appropriate to the subject matter that they are studying. African scholars must consider if we, are sufficiently decolonized to engage the subject matter meaningfully? Do we value cosmopolitanism, hybridity, and unquestioned adherence to the global so much that we become blinded to the reality, choosing instead to focus on how far Africa is from a universal ideal that is utterly meaningless to the lives of the people that we claim to study? Is a universal ideal desirable in each